the creak of my front door swinging open yanked me out of the legal brief I was scrutinizing in my home office. I froze mid-annotation, listening intently. Footsteps echoed across the tile, accompanied by a woman's voice muttering something about blatant violations of Section 12.3. I hadn't scheduled anyone to visit today, and my housekeeper wasn't due until Thursday. Setting my pen down, I moved quietly to the top of the stairs. Below me stood a woman in her mid-50s, a tight burgundy, blazer stretched across her shoulders, clutching a clipboard like it was a weapon. She was already halfway through my kitchen, rifling through cabinets and snapping photos of their contents with her phone. "Improper storage of cleaning supplies," she announced, scribbling furiously. "That's a $20 fine right there." "Excuse me," I said calmly from above. "What exactly are you doing in my home?" She froze mid-scribble, head snapping up. Her eyes widened as they took in the federal court. "Seal emblazoned on my polo from last week's charity golf tournament." The clipboard shook slightly in her manicured grip. I'd moved to Riverside Meadows only 3 months prior, seeking a refuge from the chaos of downtown and the never-ending parade of high-profile cases that had defined the last decade of my life. After 20 years on the federal bench, I craved quiet streets, anonymity, and neighbors who didn't know me from headlines. The modest colonial at the end of Magnolia Drive seemed perfect, tucked behind mature oaks with just enough yard to meet the HOA's requirements I'd barely glanced at during closing. My neighbors seemed pleasant enough during brief walks, though several had warned me about the HOA president. "Watch out for Patricia Harrington," my next-door neighbor, Stone, had said while meticulously trimming his hedges. "We call her Karen around here, just never to her face. She's been running the Riverside Meadows HOA like her personal kingdom for 5 years. I'd nodded politely, thinking I could handle the usual suburban politics. After all, I had presided over racketeering trials and constitutional cases. Surely a homeowners association would be simpler. The first notice arrived 2 weeks after I moved in. A crisp white envelope slipped under my door claiming my mailbox exceeded the maximum height specified in subsection 8.4.2 of the community guidelines. I measured it myself. It was within regulation. When I called the HOA, Patricia's syrupy voice dismissed it as a clerical error, but suggested I might replace it just in case. The second notice appeared a week later, stating my recycling bins had been left in view too long, violating visual harmony rules. This baffled me. I kept them in the garage except on collection day. The third notice cited me for excessive dandelions in the backyard, even though I had just had professional landscaping done. Each time I responded with polite, firm letters explaining why the violations were baseless. Patricia's tactics escalated. She began photographing my property from the sidewalk at odd hours. I caught glimpses of her burgundy blazer disappearing behind trees when I peered outside. Mass emails followed warning the neighborhood of declining property values, caused by residents who didn't respect community standards. Then came the intrusions. Subtle, almost imperceptible at first. A stack of mail slightly shifted. Cabinets I remembered closing left ajar. The garage door opener, usually in my car, inexplicably on the kitchen counter. I initially chalked it up to absent-mindedness, stress from the move, or long court hours. But the night I found my back door unlocked, I knew something was amiss. Installing security cameras took a single day. I opted for a professional system with motion sensors, night vision, and cloud backups. Then I waited. It didn't take long. Footage from the following Tuesday revealed everything. At 2:17 p.m., Patricia Harrington approached my front door, glanced around nervously, then withdrew a key from her pocket. She let herself in as though she owned the place. That key, I later discovered through discreet inquiries, came from the emergency lockbox required for first responders. HOA presidents had access for community safety. She spent 43 minutes inside photographing. Everything from my refrigerator's contents to the books on my shelves, muttering about violations and fines. I could have confronted her immediately, but decades on the bench taught me patience. I wanted her to reveal her own folly. So I stayed quiet, continued recording, and waited for the right moment. That moment arrived on a Thursday afternoon. I worked from home deliberately, my car tucked in the garage. Patricia arrived at 2:35 p.m., perfectly on schedule. I listened as she wandered the first floor, her voice carrying upward. "Improper shelf spacing in the pantry," she announced, Non-approved water softener brand. And look at this store brand pasta, definitely lowers the neighborhood standards. That's when I made my entrance. Patricia Harrington, I said, descending the stairs deliberately. You're trespassing in my home. She spun around, clipboard pressed tightly against her chest. I have every right to conduct HOA inspections. It's in the bylaws, she shot back. The bylaws do allow for exterior property inspections with 24-hour notice, I replied, reaching the bottom step. They do not, however, permit breaking and entering into private residences. That's covered under state criminal code, section 423.1. Her face flushed crimson, clashing sharply with the burgundy of her blazer. I didn't break anything. I have a key from an emergency lockbox you've misappropriated for personal use, I countered. That's theft of services at minimum and possibly fraud. I pulled out my phone, displaying the security footage. I have 3 separate instances of you entering my home without permission. Each counts as a Class A misdemeanor, Patricia. That's up to a year in jail per incident. The clipboard slipped from her fingers, papers fluttering across my hardwood floor. You can't prove anything. I'm the HOA president. I have authority. Your authority ends at the property line, I said calmly. And speaking of authority, I should properly introduce myself. Judge Harrison Mitchell, Federal District Court for the Eastern District. I believe you've been photographing my federal court ID badge through my office window. It's right there on my bookshelf. The color drained from her face so fast I thought she might faint. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. You're lying. You can't be. Would you like to see my credentials, or should we wait for the police to verify them? I held up my phone again. I was planning to call 911. But if you'd prefer to turn yourself in voluntarily, I'm happy to drive you to the station myself. This is entrapment, she shrieked, backing toward the door. You set me up. You moved here just to destroy our community standards. I moved here for peace, I corrected. You chose to commit multiple felonies. And no, Patricia, it's not entrapment when you break into someone's home of your own volition. That's just criminal behavior. Patricia attempted to push past me toward the door, but I stepped aside politely. By all means, leave, but understand that I will be filing charges. The evidence is already uploaded to a secure server, and I've documented every false violation notice you've sent. She stumbled onto the porch, then turned back with whatever defiance she could muster. The HOA board will hear about this. You'll be fined. You'll be forced out of this neighborhood. I look forward to that meeting, I said. In fact, I'll be bringing my attorney. She specializes in civil rights violations and malicious prosecution. You'll find her thorough. The next few days unfolded with predictable precision. I filed a police report that afternoon, providing detectives with full documentation, footage, dates, and evidence of Patricia's repeated harassment. The criminal charges were straightforward. 3 counts of breaking and entering, misuse of emergency service resources, and criminal trespass. The HOA board meeting the following week was standing room only. Word had spread like wildfire, and every homeowner who had ever received a spurious fine or threatening letter from Patricia wanted to witness her downfall. I presented my case with the same methodical approach I'd used in court, laying out evidence piece by piece. Security footage from April 15th, I said, connecting my laptop to the meeting room projector. Miss Harrington entered my home without permission at 2:17 p.m. The room gasped as they watched her casual intrusion. April 22nd, 2:31 p.m. April 29th, at 2:35 p.m. Each time she lingered, inside between 30 and 50 minutes, board member Garrett Thompson, a perpetually nervous local accountant, cleared his throat. Patricia, is this true? Did you enter Judge Mitchell's home? Patricia, flanked by the budget attorney she had retained, tried to maintain her imperious stance. I was conducting authorized HOA inspections. It is my duty as president to ensure standards are maintained inside people's homes. Patricia, we've discussed this before. Another board member, Margaret Liu, said, our authority is limited to exterior property. This is criminal. The vote to remove Patricia from the board was unanimous, even her usual allies conceding. But that was just the beginning. As news of her removal spread, neighbors began coming forward with their own stories. Stan revealed she'd entered his home while he was on vacation, rearranging furniture. The Andersons discovered she'd been in their basement, photographing their storage system. The young couple at the corner produced security footage of her attempting to open doors and windows. The civil lawsuit I filed sought damages for invasion of privacy intentional infliction of emotional distress, and trespass. My attorney, as promised, was meticulous. She uncovered that Patricia had systematically entered homes across the neighborhood for years, keeping detailed files on residents far beyond HOA business. Discovery revealed notebooks filled with personal observations, shopping habits, visitors, and private conversations overheard while trespassing. The criminal trial was swift. With overwhelming evidence and multiple victim testimonies, the jury deliberated for less than 2 hours. Patricia Harrington was convicted on all charges, 3 counts of breaking and entering, each carrying up to 12 months in jail plus fines. The sentencing judge, a colleague who had recused me from the case, showed little sympathy. "Ms. Harrington," Judge Chin said, "you were entrusted with leadership in your community. Instead of serving your neighbors, you violated their most basic expectation of privacy and security. You are sentenced to 18 months in state prison, followed by 3 years of probation. You are ordered to pay restitution totaling $87,000 to all victims." Patricia's shriek echoed through the courtroom as bailiffs approached. "This isn't fair. I was protecting property values. I was maintaining standards." Her designer heels clicked frantically against the floor as they led her away, still protesting her accountability.